Today we're reading out of As Bill Sees It, Humility, Ways Toward, starting on page 2. You going to start, Michael?
Yes, page 2, In God's Hands. When we look back, we realize the things which came to us when we put ourselves in God's hands were better than anything we could have planned. My depression deepened unbearably, and finally it seemed to me as though I was at the very bottom of the pit. For the moment, the last vestige of my proud obstinacy was crushed. All at once I found myself crying out, "If there is a God, let him show himself. I am ready to do anything, anything." Suddenly the room lit up with a great white light. It seemed to me in the mind's eye that I was on a mountain, and that a wind not of air but of spirit was blowing. And then it burst upon me that I was a free man. Slowly the ecstasy subsided. I lay on the bed. But now for a time I was in another world, a new world of consciousness. All about me and through me, there was a wonderful feeling of presence. And I thought to myself, so this is the God of the preachers.
Okay, 12. Seeking Fool's Gold. Pride is the basic breeder of most human difficulties, the chief block to true progress. Pride lures us into making demands upon ourselves or others which cannot be met without preventing or misusing our God-given instincts. When the satisfaction of our instincts for sex, security, and a place in society becomes the primary object of our lives, then pride steps in to justify our excesses. I may attain humility for today only to the extent I'm able to avoid the bog of guilt and rebellion on one hand, and on the other hand, that fair but deceiving land which is strewn with the fool's gold coins of pride. This is how I can find and stay on the high road to humility, which lies between these extremes. Therefore, a constant inventory which can reveal when I am off the road in always, when I'm off the road is always in order.
Okay, page 31, In God's Economy. In God's economy, nothing is wasted. Through failure, we learn a lesson in humility, which is probably needed, painful though it is. We did not always come closer to wisdom by reason of our virtues. Our better understanding is often rooted in the pains of our former follies. Because this has been the essence of our individual experience, it is also the essence of our experience as a fellowship.
44. Daily acceptance. Too much of my life has been spent in dwelling upon the faults of others. This is the most subtle and perverse form of self-satisfaction, which permits us to remain comfortably unaware of our own defects. Too often we are heard to say, "If it weren't for him or her, how happy I'd be." Our very first problem is to accept our present circumstances as they are, ourselves as we are, and the people about us as they are. This is to adopt a realistic humility without which no genuine advance can ever begin. Again and again, we shall need to return to that unflattering point of departure. This is an exercise in acceptance that we can profitably practice every day of our lives, provided we strenuously avoid turning these realistic surveys of the facts of life into unrealistic alibis for apathy or defeatism. They can be the sure foundation upon which increased emotional health and therefore spiritual progress can be built.
Page 83, We Cannot Live Alone. All of AA's 12 steps ask us to go contrary to our natural desires. They all deflate our egos. When it comes to ego deflation, few steps are harder to take than the fifth. Scarcely any step is more necessary to long-time sobriety and peace of mind. AA experience has taught us we cannot live alone with our pressing problems and the character defects which cause or aggravate them. If step 4 has revealed in stark relief those experiences we'd rather not remember, then the need to quit living by ourselves with those tormenting ghosts of yesterday gets more urgent than ever. We have to talk to somebody about them. We cannot wholly rely on friends to solve all our difficulties. A good advisor will never do all our thinking for us. He knows that each final choice must be ours. He will therefore help to eliminate fear, expediency, and self-deception, so enabling us to make choices which are loving, wise, and honest.
Okay. 91. Courage and prudence. When fear persisted, we knew it for what it was, and we became able to handle it. We began to see each adversity as a God-given opportunity to develop the kind of courage which is born of humility rather than of bravado. Prudence is a workable middle ground, a channel of clear sailing between the obstacles of fear on the one side and of recklessness on the other. Prudence in practice creates a definite climate, the only climate in which harmony, effectiveness, and consistent spiritual progress can be achieved. Prudence is rational concern without worry. 106.
Okay, page 106, perfect humility. For myself, I try to seek out the truest definition of humility that I can. This will not be the perfect definition because I shall always be imperfect. At this writing, I would choose one like this. Absolute humility would consist of a state of complete freedom from myself. Freedom from all the claims that my defects of character now lay so heavily upon me. Perfect humility would be full willingness in all times and places to find and to do the will of God. When I meditate upon such a vision, I need not be dismayed, because I shall never attain it, nor need I swell with presumption that one of these days its virtues shall all be mine. I only need to dwell on the vision itself, letting it grow and evermore fill my heart. This done, I can compare it with my last taken personal inventory. Then I get a sane and healthy idea of where I stand on the highway to humility. I see that my journey toward God has scarcely begun. As I thus get down to my right size and stature, my self-concern and importance become amusing.
Okay. 126. Admitted to God. Provided you hold back nothing in taking the fifth step, your sense of relief will mount from minute to minute. The dammed up emotions of years break out of their confinement and miraculously vanish as soon as they are exposed. As the pain subsides, a healing tranquility takes its place. When humility and serenity are so combined, something else of great moment is apt to occur. Many in AA, once agnostic or atheist, tells us it was during this stage of step 5 that he first actually felt the presence of God. And even those who already had faith often became conscious of God as they never were before.
Page 149, Guide to a Better Way. Almost none of us like the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, the confession of shortcomings which the steps require. We saw that the program really worked in others, and we had come to believe in the hopelessness of life as we had been living it. When, therefore, we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, there was nothing left for us but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. Implicit throughout AA's traditions is the confession that our fellowship has its sins. We admit that we have character defects as a society and that these defects threaten us continually. Our traditions are a guide to better ways of working and living, and they are to group survival and harmony what AA's 12 steps are to each member's sobriety and peace of mind.
Okay. 156.
Wait, I skipped one.
You did 149. I'm doing 156.
Did you do 126? Yeah, okay. I did skip. All right. Sorry.
No, that's okay. People are enjoying you.
I bet they are.
As improved perception of our humility starts a revolutionary change in our outlook, our eyes begin to open to the immense values which have come straight out of painful ego puncturing. Until now, our lives have been largely devoted to running from pain and problems. Escape via the bottle was always our solution. Then in AA, we looked and listened. Everywhere we saw failure and misery transformed by humility into priceless assets. To those who have made progress in AA, humility amounts to a clear recognition of what and who we really are, followed by a sincere attempt to become what we could be. 159.
Between the extremes, page 159. The real question is whether we can learn anything from our experiences upon which we may grow and help others to grow in the likeness and the image of God. We know that if we rebel against doing what is reasonably possible for us, then we will be penalized. And we will be equally penalized if we presume in ourselves a perfection that simply is not there. Apparently, the course of relative humility and progress will have to lie somewhere between these extremes. And our slow progress away from rebellion, true perfection is doubtless several millennia away.
191. The beginning of humility. There are few absolutes inherent in the 12 steps. Most steps are open to interpretation based on the experience and outlook of the individual. Consequently, the individual is free to start the steps at whatever point he can or will. God, as we understand him, may define as a power greater, or the higher power. For thousands of members, the AA group itself has become a higher power in the beginning. This acknowledgement is easy to make if a newcomer knows that most of the members are sober and he isn't. His admission is the beginning of humility. At least the newcomer is willing to disclaim that he himself is God. That's all the start he needs. If following this achievement, he will relax and practice as many of the steps as he can, he is sure to grow spiritually.
211, reaching for humility. We saw we needn't always be bludgeoned and beaten into humility. It could come quite as much from our voluntary reaching for it as it could from unremitting suffering. We first reach for a little humility, knowing that we shall perish of alcoholism if we do not. After a time, though we may still rebel somewhat, we commence to practice humility because this is the right thing to do. Then comes the day when, finally freed in large degree from rebellion, we practice humility because we deeply want it as a way of life.
213. Complete the house cleaning. Time after time, newcomers have tried to keep to themselves shoddy facts about their lives. Trying to avoid the humbling experience of the fifth step, they have turned to easier methods. Almost invariably, they got drunk. Having persevered with the rest of the program, they wondered why they fell. We think the reason is that they never completed their house cleaning. They took an inventory all right, but hung on to some of the worst items in stock. They only thought they had lost their egoism and fear. They only thought they have humbled themselves. But they had not learned enough of humility, fearlessness, and honesty in the sense we find it necessary until they told someone else their entire life story. 236.
Page 236, perfection. The only objective. Only the objective. There can be no absolute humility for us humans. At best, we can merely glimpse the meaning and splendor of such a perfect ideal. Only God himself can manifest in the absolute. We human beings must needs live and grow in the domain of the relative. So we seek progress in humility for today. Few of us can quickly or easily become ready even to look at spiritual and moral perfection. We want to settle for only as much development as may get us by in life, according, of course, to our various and sundry ideas of what will get us by. Mistakenly, we strive for a self-determined objective rather than for the perfect objective, which is of God.
246. Instinct to live. When men and women pour so much alcohol into themselves that they destroy their lives, they commit a most unnatural act. Defying their instinctive desire for self-preservation, they seem bent upon self-destruction. They work against their own deepest instinct. As they are progressively humbled by the terrific beating administered by alcohol, the grace of God can enter them and expel their obsession. Here their powerful instinct to live can cooperate fully with their Creator's desire to give them new life. The central characteristics of the spiritual experience is that it gives the recipient a new and better motivation out of all proportion to any process of discipline, belief, or faith. These experiences cannot make us whole at once. They are a rebirth to fresh and certain opportunity. 248.
248. We need outside help. It was evident that a solitary self-appraisal and the admission of our defects based upon that alone would be nearly enough. We have to have outside help if we were surely to know and admit the truth about ourselves, the help of God and then of another human being. Only by discussing ourselves, holding back nothing, only by being willing to take advice and accept direction, did we set foot on the road to straight thinking, solid honesty, and genuine humility. If we are fooling ourselves, a competent advisor can see this quickly. And as he skillfully guides us away from our fantasies, we are surprised to find that we have a few of the usual urges to defend ourselves against unpleasant truths. In no other way can fear, pride, and ignorance be so readily melted. After a time, we realize that we are standing firm on a brand new foundation for integrity, and we gratefully credit our sponsors whose advice pointed the way.
291. Pain killer or pain healer. I believe that when we were active alcoholics, we drank mostly to kill pain of one kind or another, physical or emotional or psychic. Of course, everybody has a cracking point, and I suppose you reach yours. Hence, the resort once more to the bottle. If I were you, I wouldn't heap devastating blame on myself for this. On the other hand, the experience should redouble your conviction that alcohol has no permanent value as a painkiller. In every AA story, pain has been the price of admission into a new life. But this admission price purchased more than we expected. It led us to a measure of humility, which we soon discovered to be a healer of pain. We began to fear pain less and desire humility more than ever.
Page 305.
305.
From the taproot. The principle that we shall find no enduring strength until we first admit complete defeat is the main taproot, from which our whole society has sprung and flowered. Every newcomer is told and soon realizes for himself that his humble admission of powerlessness over alcohol is his first step towards liberation from its paralyzing grip. So it is that we first see humility as a necessity, that this is the barest beginning. To get completely away from our aversion to the idea of being humble, to gain a vision of humility as the avenue to true freedom of the human spirit, to be willing to work for humility as something to be desired for itself, takes most of us a long, long time. A whole lifetime geared to self-centeredness cannot be set in reverse all at once.
311. Telling the worst. Though the variations were many, my main thing was always how god-awful I am. Just as I often exaggerated my modest attainments by pride, so I exaggerated my defects through guilt. I would race about, confessing all, and a great deal more, to whoever would listen. Believe it or not, I took this widespread exposure of my sins to be great humility on my part, and considered it a great spiritual asset and consolation. But later on, I realized at depth that the great harms I had done others were not truly regretted. These episodes were merely the basis of storytelling and exhibitionism. With this realization came the beginning of a certain amount of humility. In our final reading, 316.
Page 316, our protective mantle. Almost every newspaper reporter who covers AA complains at first of the difficulty of writing a story without names. But he quickly forgets this difficulty when he realizes there is a group of people who care nothing for acclaim. Probably this is the first time in his life he has ever reported on an organization that wants no personalized publicity. Cynic though he may be, this obvious sincerity quickly transforms him into a friend of AA. Moved by the spirit of anonymity, we try to give up our natural desires for personal distinction as AA members, both among fellow alcoholics and before the general public. As we lay aside these very human aspirations, we believe that each of us takes part in the weaving of a protective mantle which covers our whole society and under which we may grow and work in unity.